To another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Giraldi.
What's going on, guys?
And today we're going to be looking at guys that you can add before your week one start. So this is like preseason waiver wire, I guess, but some of the trends that may have been happening to some of these players since your draft, and wanted to get you guys caught up on guys that you could be looking at possibly adding to your rosters. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start here with the running back position. And you can see on the trending up, that's where we're going to start. Number one, Dalvin Cook. That shouldn't exactly be a surprise because he did just sign with Dallas. It's to be determined if he's going to be on the week one roster. It's to be determined what his role is even going to be on this offense, if it's just additional backfield assurance. But I personally don't think that this is a huge deal. And you can see he also shows up on trending down in the number two spot. So, guys are Snap added him and then maybe made some further evaluation. And about a quarter of the leagues that added him decided to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gotten a lot of reports from Dallas that Rico Dowdle is going to be the guy. And like you said, with Cook might not even play week one, and people have rosters right now that are, pretty full of guys that they like. So he's not someone that I would even consider adding at this point.
Agree on that. If you're in a really deep league, if you're in a dynasty league with deep benches, go ahead and throw a speculative ad at him. It's not really that big of a deal if you are looking at him versus some of the very, very deep players in the player pool. But in your regular standard redraft leagues, definitely are going to just pass on Dalvin Cook for the time being. The number two in trending up here, this is somebody that I personally think is a must add for anybody that has a Christian McCaffrey as their first round pick, right? I mean, Jordan Mason is going to be the number two running back now in San Francisco. They have had him around. They do like him. He's a big running back, can definitely handle the workload if McCaffrey does go down. And on top of that, Elijah Mitchell went on season-ending IR. So you don't have to worry about Elijah Mitchell this season stealing any work from Mason if there is an opportunity there. And the 49ers are looking at this season not just as a 17-game season, but more as like a 21 game season. And so, there is an opportunity possibly that they decide to spell McCaffrey a little more than they have in the past during this season. McCaffrey another year older going into his year 29 season. I do think that Jordan Mason is a must grab for all McCaffrey owners. And if you have a spot, he's not a bad speculative ad and try and hold it over the McCaffrey owner, or, just be fine holding him on your bench. And if anything does happen to McCaffrey, you have an immediate starter at running back.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where if CMC misses a week, 2 weeks, goes on PUP, things like that, people are going to be unloading on the fab bids for him. So if you can afford to take him on your team, even if you don't have McCaffrey, and I think you mentioned this, potentially use him as trade bait to the team that has McCaffrey. I just think that you can make space for someone like Jordan Mason, who is going to be a must start if McCaffrey misses any time.
100%. And, we mentioned it, but going hand in hand, if you look at the trending down, number three on the list is Elijah Mitchell, right? That's not surprising at all. He's down to 9%. That's going to go down to 0%. In all redraft leagues, right? The 9%, or it might go down to 7, 6, 5. The dynasty leagues that play on Sleeper, that's pretty much going to be the only spots that have him. If you have Elijah Mitchell on your redraft roster, you can go ahead and cut him. The number three guy on trending up, somebody that you added, and I think is a good speculative ad, is Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah, so the reason I added Mitchell is because we have 2 IR spots on our league. And so for the time being, I don't have any players in those spots. I know in our league that you've got Jonathan Brooks and TJ Hawkinson in those spots. So if you're someone that's drafted that way, you can't really afford to add Mitchell at this point. But, also as a Derrick Henry owner, it's a little bit of insurance. But, he might be someone that I have to move off of IR if I do have players that are going to be injured, because even when he does come back, we're not 100% sure how healthy he's going to be. I mean, that was a pretty bad injury to watch last year. But if you have the space, there's no reason why you shouldn't be adding Mitchell if you just have empty IR spots.
Yeah, definitely agree there. And the key there, right? This isn't somebody I feel like Jordan Mason where I would add him to hold him over the Henry owner. He's not going to replace Derrick Henry, period. Jordan Mason's the same way, but we at least feel confident he'll get all of the work at this point. Keaton Mitchell probably won't, right? They'll spread that work amongst Mitchell and whoever else if something
Justice
were to happen.
Hill.
Yeah, yeah, Justice Hill or whoever else, I mean, they always kind of have done this until they signed Henry this offseason. So, I mean, they had Gus Edwards as the lead guy last year. So, they can make it work in Baltimore. So he's not somebody that I feel as confident is going to get the entire role. But, when you see outlier per carry numbers as a rookie, that generally leads to a productive player, right? That foreshadows the ability for that player to get more work and for him to be productive. So I do really like Keaton Mitchell just as a player in general. If he is able to come back by mid-season, you're going to be happy that you added him at this point, especially if your team can kind of withstand holding him on an IR spot. All right, and then the fourth guy on trending up here is Emmanuel Wilson. This is going to go hand in hand with number 4 over here, Marshawn Lloyd, but also somebody who didn't make the trending down list was AJ Dillon, who got put on season-ending IR. So this is definitely a reaction to the fact that Lloyd is banged up. Lloyd's hurt. He did avoid the pup, so he might be back in week 2, 3, 4, something like that. But Dillon is out indefinitely, so Wilson is the number 2 running back, and he's 7% owned, so still not owned in a ton of leagues at this point. But there is potential, anyways, that if Jacobs doesn't handle 100% of the touches, he could find himself getting on the field at 30% clip. Maybe he catches some passes. Maybe he looks a little more explosive than we're expecting. So that's where the speculative ads are coming for Emmanuel Wilson.
Yeah, and he's not someone I would spend a roster spot on. I mean, if at this point, if Jacobs does end up missing time, it'll probably be middle to later in the season. Lloyd should be back. And I'm not confident that if Wilson is the starter, that they're just going to feature him entirely. I think this offense will, gravitate more toward throwing the ball even more than they already planned to. So I wouldn't spin a spot on him.
Yeah. And I think over the first 4 weeks until Lloyd is back, that there is a chance that Jacobs just gets 100% of the touches.
Yeah.
So I'm not using a speculative ad on him because in week 1, you see Jacobs get 100% of the touches, 100% of the touches and 85% snap share. Wilson's going to be irrelevant. And even if something were to happen to Jacobs, like Marshawn Lloyd is coming back, who's going to immediately pass him on the depth chart. So he really has very limited value over the first month of the year. And so that's not something I'm interested in spending a roster spot on. The fifth guy here that we're going to talk about on the trending up list is Samaje Perine. This is somebody that I am very interested in adding. He just got cut from the Broncos, and Kansas City immediately picked him up, and he's definitely a receiving downs specialist. He's a veteran. They're going to trust him in pass protection. I do really think that he has the ability to possibly get on the field during passing down situations in a quasi Jerick McKinnon role. But, they have Pacheco. Pacheco is expected to be the 3-down back. So I don't necessarily think he's going to affect Pacheco as much as I think that he is going to be the guy if Pacheco were to go down. I think he has the ability to be a productive player. If you have to rely on him for a month while Pacheco is out, I definitely think you're going to be able to, and he's a very clear handcuff in my opinion. So I would, if I had Pacheco, again, similarly to Jordan Mason, but to a lesser degree, I would definitely be targeting getting Samaje Perine on my team.
Yeah, and adding Pirine is kind of annoying for Pacheco owners just to Kansas City because, one of the reasons that you and I pushed Pacheco up quite a bit throughout the offseason was because we expected his passing game workload to, increase quite a bit because we saw how much McKinnon took away from that when they were sharing the field together and how much Pacheco's went up when McKinnon was out. So as a Pacheco owner, a little bit bummed to see this, but I do think that if you have him, it's worth adding just to be safe.
Yeah, and I did originally and early in the offseason, my critique on Pacheco was that he hadn't really been a high-end upside running back until McKinnon went down and he got all his passing game work. And my expectation was that the Chiefs were going to sign somebody into that passing game role, just like they had McKinnon, but they never did, right? And then they just said Pacheco can handle that. We saw it last year. He was awesome in that role down the stretch, right? And now they signed Perine. I'm not saying he's going to be in that role. I'm just saying that there are people that do think that could be the case and that are starting to push Pacheco down a little bit because they don't see this massive upside in the passing game that they did before with Perine. So we'll see how that plays out, but I do think that he is worth a add if you do have Pacheco. And this one kind of goes hand in hand with the number 1 trending down. So it's funny how you kind of see within the running backs, right? These guys are moving according to other situations. And number one is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, been dropped a lot. And this also has to do with him going on IR. So, or I guess PUP or the sick list, whatever they put him on, he's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. He's not going to be involved. It's going to be P. Ryan. So, the roster, the number of people who added P. Ryan is roughly the same as the number of people who cut Clyde. So I do think that was probably likely a lot of one-for-one transactions, and that P. Ryan's roster percentage will continue to increase as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add on CEH is the Chiefs drafted him over Jonathan Taylor, which hasn't hurt them, but
Yeah,
God, he could have been, that would have been weird, fun to think about.
Yeah, insanity. And then there's a couple more guys that were getting cut that I added to the bottom of the trending down list here at 5 and 6. Khalil Herbert has been cut, the fifth most of any running back. That actually really surprises me. He was playing a lot with the first team in the preseason. I know Swift had a couple different weird situations. He sat one of the games, and then he had like a 42-yard play on one of the drives. And I think they probably saw that and said, "That's enough for you. You're going to be our starter. Maybe don't go out there and run any more." But Herbert was playing on over half the snaps with the first team. So, I think it's interesting that he got cut. I do kind of think he's going to be there in between the tackles runner, and there is a possibility he gets traded too. Like if he landed with Dallas, say, that's going to be somebody you want on your team. So I'm surprised he's getting cut. What do you think of Herbert?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think in the system that he's in and being behind Swift, he's not someone that I would, want on my roster. But the trade thing isn't really something I thought of because what about maybe the Chargers as well? So there is some potential value in that.
And the last guy here is number 6 on the trending down is Trey Benson. So he's still owned in 76% of leagues, so still very, very highly owned. But I am surprised to see that his roster percentage is going down. I think what might have happened is people drafted him thinking that, maybe he's going to be good, or drafted him in like round 11. Like, okay, maybe I have a flex option here. And then they saw the week 1 projection is like 4.2 points and said, you know what, I'm going to go in a different direction. So I personally wouldn't have made that decision on dropping him so many times, but, clearly a lot of people are.
Yeah, he's someone that should not be trending down. He should be trending up, especially for James Conner owners. I mean, I think to what you said as well, a lot of people that didn't draft kickers and defenses that took a shot on Benson late, they're like, oh crap, I need to cut someone. He's the clear number 2. But yeah, I think he should be rostered all year long. I mean, if Connor plays 17 games, great, but we haven't really seen that out of him. We don't really expect that from him. So when he does, if and when he does miss time, Benson's going to step into a huge role. And we know how explosive he is. I mean, he prototypes as a true workhorse running back. So, yeah, he's someone who should be added on all Connor teams. And, if you've got a spot for him on non-Connor teams, go ahead and pick him up.
Feel the same way there too. So going over to wide receivers now, let's take a look at the top wide receivers that are trending up. The number 1 name on here is Devon Vili. I don't even know really who that is, honestly. He's, been added in so many leagues, but still only up to 4% rostered. Maybe you can talk about him a little bit.
I don't know a darn thing about him. I think this is a reaction to the Tim Patrick being cut and them not having great reports about Mims and Troy Franklin. And people are like, oh, he's going to be the number 2, but I'm not sure I even want the number 2 on Denver's offense anyway. So not someone I'm even remotely on my radar.
Yeah. So I mean, Cortland Sutton is going to be the number 1 on Denver, right? That's going to translate into what? Maybe number 3 production, maybe number 4, wide receiver 4 production, right? So is the number 2 going to translate into wide receiver 6 production, wide receiver 7 production? I'm just out on this for sure, especially since I still have hope that Mims can be the one that steps up into the explosive passing game role. So kind of out on him. Number 2 on trending up is Jordan Whittington. And I understand this one at least. I mean, he was the preseason darling. He might have won preseason MVP if they gave out that award.
Yeah, I mean, people are looking for the next Puka, right? I draft Whittington in the last round of my best ball drafts almost all the time just because the Rams are honest about the guys they like and they seem to like him. So he will be the number 3 at the very best, but I don't know. I get it.
Yeah, I get it too. Just searching for that third option. Stafford has shown that he can support 3. And so, if he's going to be on the field a lot, I do think that that could be a good speculative add. I am going to jump down to number 5 on this list because it's the exact same analysis here, right? Demarcus Robinson is the one who's actually expected to open the season as the number 3 wide receiver. And so, if he gets on the field and has a couple productive games, I think he could lock down that role from Whittington and, be a productive player in the Rams offense in the way that, Van Jefferson or whoever else has been playing that role just hasn't been. Number 3 on the trending up is Darnell Mooney. It's interesting that people are just starting to get on the train here with Mooney. I mean, Kirk Cousins wanted him to be there, brought him in. There's obviously going to be a lot of people on the offense in front of him, including London, Bijan, and Pitts, right? So those guys are likely going to see the ball more than him. But there's an opportunity here for deep shots in the Jordan Addison role. You kind of can parallel it almost exactly to Minnesota if that's how Cousins is going to be looking for his receivers. Mooney has the deep speed. We've seen him be a productive player. He's still not super old. So I think there's a little bit more upside here with Mooney than I had ever considered really before seeing him on this list.
We don't know how the offense is going to look week one under this new system and with the new quarterback. So I think adding Mooney is a good idea. I wouldn't start him week one, but if he has a more prominent role than maybe we're expecting, then he could eventually be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4.
Yeah, I agree. Bye week fill in at flex type of thing, or if he's scoring touchdowns every once in a while, you can just kind of hope in good matchups, or if he's got a burnable corner as the number 2 corner on a team, maybe you just decide to start him during those weeks. So I don't mind that pick at all. Number 4 on trending up is Jalen Tolbert. I'm not sure I understand this one at all. I would definitely expect him to be on the other side. He is the perfect cut candidate if you need somebody that you like. So I don't get this one at all. I'd be cutting Jalen Tolbert everywhere. I do not think he should be rostered.
Yeah, nothing to add on that.
Yeah, so Demarcus Robinson we talked about. Number 6, somebody that I'm getting a little more excited about is Iosivas, the number 3 wide receiver in Cincinnati. He's going to be playing in the slot in that Tyler Boyd role. Obviously, I don't think he's Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd was very productive for a long time, and I had only heard of Iosivas, maybe a couple weeks ago. As we were getting closer and closer to the season, camp notes were coming out about him beating out Burton for the number 3 role, which I think was kind of expected because Burton's more of an outside receiver, right? He'd have to kind of change his play style to fit the number 3, what they kind of need. But I think Iosivas could be relatively productive and is a decent dart throw in Dynasty especially. But, if you want to add somebody to the end of your roster, you have big rosters, I think he's worth a shot.
I know you mentioned Burton. Just monitor Jamar Chase situation because every day that goes by, there's a better chance that Chase misses week 1. And I think we'll see Burton skyrocket up this list because, like you said, he does play outside and would be thrust into that starting role. So I would rather just take him if Chase does miss time. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch how that plays out the next few days.
It really will be because Burton is somebody that if Chase misses week 1, I think you can start Burton. I legitimately think he can be a starter in a 3 wide receiver flex league. And Chase plays a dominant role, and I think Higgins will have a big target share, but I think Burton is going to be out there. He did flash in the preseason. He had an 83-yard game with a touchdown in the preseason. As raw as he is, I think if he gets a shot on the outside, use his speed a little bit and, see what he can do as a starter, I do think that he's going to be somebody I would start in a way that I wouldn't Iosivas regardless of what happens with Chase. And then the last guy on the trending up list is Greg Dortch. I did go down to number 7 because he was the 7th player here. I do think that this is also somebody that could start the season very hot. On a per touch basis, per catch for basis, he's been extremely productive with the touches he's been given, right? He's been a very efficient player. He plays in the slot, and there's a chance that, he's the third option in this offense in the passing game. Connor might be the third option in the passing game, but we're not entirely sure yet. Dortch has looked great in camp. He's been getting very good reports. He's going to be starting with the first team offense. So I don't mind throwing a dart at Greg Dortch either.
I think Arizona is going to have a really good offense. And if he really is the number 3 in that, you can play matchups. I mean, looking at week 1, he's probably not someone you'd start, but that could very well be a shootout with Buffalo. So if you need a fill in and he does have that established role as the season goes on, then yeah, I think he will be in starting lineups at some point.
Right. Jumping over to the trending down list. Number 1, very unfortunate news here, right? Ricky Pearsall. If you haven't heard by some miracle, he was shot in an attempted mugging, somebody trying to steal his Rolex. And so unfortunately, he has been in the hospital. He got released, but he's going to be recovering from that for at least, a good amount of time. I wouldn't expect to see him until midseason, if at all, this year. So seeing him get cut until we get more news on him, if you want to hold him, I think that's fine. If you're in a dynasty league with taxi squad options, definitely put him in your taxi squad at this point, because I do think he could be productive next year, but this year I don't think so much.
Yeah, sad to see. I mean, I used to walk that street home from work every day for 2 years, and it kind of hit close to home. So terrible situation. Hope he's all right. But yeah, that was tough to see.
Yeah, tough to see. Um, if you didn't see the video, it's kind of badass too. So just to elaborate
Yeah.
on the situation a little bit, the guy tried to steal his Rolex, and he basically said no, shot the attempted mugger, and then he got shot through the chest. But then they were able to capture his mugger, and he walked to the ambulance.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how you get shot through the chest and be able to just walk it off, but I mean, talk about tough as nails. I mean, he's
Yeah.
he's probably obviously upset about how it's going to impact his rookie year, but probably just very thankful to be alive. Check out the video if you haven't on Pearsall. So obviously, prayers up and speedy recovery. Hoping for a speedy recovery. Um, all right, so going down to number 2 on the trending down. Obviously, turning back to fantasy football. That's what you guys are here for. So yeah, number 2 trending down. Luke McCaffrey. I do think that this was a little bit expected after the news we got. Everybody got excited about him about a week or two ago when they traded Jahan Dotson. But I do think that at this point, Luke McCaffrey is not going to be with the starters to start the year. So he was drafted obviously as a more developmental player. We've talked about Luke McCaffrey in our previous Deep Sleepers video, but I do think this is more a second half of the year or another excellent player to put in your taxi squad in Dynasty.
Yeah, and he's a guy to keep on your watch list, right? Like he's a very good athlete that's going to take some time to develop. Like just watch the progress throughout the year because he is someone that if he does play his way onto that number 2 role and Daniels is as good as advertised, then he could find himself a prominent player. But yeah, not yet.
Yeah. Jalen Polk, number 3 on the trending down list. I don't understand this at all. Maybe it's just because he was a very late pick in a lot of drafts and people are trying to pick up some of these players that are trending up. And he's just the roster casualty. I would rather have him than any receiver that we talked about on the other side, and it's not particularly close for me. I definitely think that being the number 1 in an offense gives a level of target upside that just these other guys don't have. So I definitely want Polk. I do think he's got very good hands. I think that he's going to get used a lot in the short area. And so I definitely think you should be adding Jalen Polk, not dropping him. He's 46%, so that's probably about right. But I would expect to see him on week 1 waiver wire columns if he goes, say, 8 for 50 and a touchdown, something like that. The offense isn't going to be great, so I don't think his yards per target or his yards per reception are going to be very good. But I do think that he has the potential to see some pretty sizable volume.
Yeah, you don't have to start him week 1, but as a rookie to be the potential number 1 on an offense, like let's see it play out first. Like just hold him if you can, because like you said, that's probably people cutting him for a defense and a kicker. I don't know. I see too much potential starter upside to let him go off and then someone spend 15% of their fab on him.
Yeah, yeah, agree completely. And like Pop Douglas was decent in the number 1 role last year. He's still there. So maybe he maybe people are a little worried about him because he's been getting some positive reports. But I think Polk is the guy here. They traded down away from Ladd McConkey to draft Polk, and so I think they really believe in him and that he's going to be somebody that they prioritize getting the ball to. Number 4 on the trending down list is Quentin Johnston. Just go ahead and keep cutting him. That's totally fine with me.
Yeah, nothing to add on that. Yep.
Signed, a salty Charger fan. Oh, dude, I still just can't get over that they could have had Jordan Addison, but whatever.
Yeah.
That's nothing we can do about that now. Definitely just keep cutting Quentin Johnston. 21% rostered is way too high. He's not even valuable in Dynasty. Like, cut him in Dynasty too. Try and get a Luke McCaffrey. Try and get, even like John Menchie. If you can get him on the back end of your roster, another name that I'd just much rather have, Jordan Mason, any of the running backs we talked about in Dynasty. If you're here watching it and you do have a Dynasty league, get him off your roster. Okay, number 5, Marvin Mims. That kind of goes hand in hand with Devon on the other side, I'm guessing. Negative reports on Mims, questions on if he's going to even be playing with the starters, might end up with 40% snap share, which is somebody, unfortunately, that you're going to want to cut.
I still have hope for him as a player. I liked him a lot coming out of Oklahoma, but yeah, we don't really know what this offense is going to look like. So yeah, there's no need to have him at this point.
And the number 6 on the trending down list is Jermaine Burton. We covered him with the Yosivas part of the video as well, but I do think it's worth mentioning he's going down mainly just because Yosivas got named the number 3. But again, this is going to shoot up if we get news that Jamar Chase isn't going to play in week 1. He's going to be the starter in that case, and I think he could be in for a productive first game. They play New England. They're going to be winning. I mean, maybe they decide to run the ball a lot more, but I could see him getting a shot or two in a game that should be winnable for the Bengals. That Burton gets his first start and gets his feet wet. They try and get him comfortable in the offense. They let him run a ton of routes, without Chase, and so I could see a situation where he's a valuable week 1 player. So
I was
keep.
just going to say that too. Sorry, with if they are winning, they want to give him a taste of confidence too, and they want to stick it to Chase a little bit too. I think they're going to let him run loose, and I think Burrow's going to have some fun with him if he does. So if you are a Chase owner and you're in a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex league, and Chase isn't starting, like pick up Burton. I know we said this before, but keep your eye on that.
Yeah, you could definitely do worse than Burton in that flex spot,
Yeah.
I think, if Chase is out. And if you have an IR spot, right, hopefully your commissioner has it set so you can put out players in your IR spots. Once Chase is out, you can put him in there. You don't even have to cut anybody to add Burton to your roster. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here with the tight ends. The trending up was a very short list, so we're only going to talk about 3 of these players. Taysom Hill being number 1 on this list, I feel like this is an annual thing. This is not surprising at all. You wait until the end of your draft in a 12-team league to draft a tight end. You end up with somebody that you don't want, and you go to the waiver wire and say, oh, look, Taysom Hill's here. Oh, Taysom Hill might get some goal line run. Oh, we're hunting tight end, or we're hunting touchdowns anyway, so let's just pick up Taysom Hill. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a pretty good idea. I might do it. I had a dynasty draft where I was advising one of my buddies on, and Taysom Hill was the target at tight end in round 17 or 18. He was still there. He's going to be starting him, to start off his dynasty league, and I don't have a problem starting Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see some 20-point weeks out of him. We're also going to see some twos, but if you're the team that drafted Cole Kmet, who we'll talk about, then I might just want to take the potential upside with Hill.
Yeah, I agree there. And then these other 2 might be a little bit of a reflection that owners didn't know that these 2 were on new teams, right? Parkinson came from Seattle over to the Rams. He's going to be the starter there. And Johnny Smith came over from New England and is with Miami now. So, not really inspiring guys there, but, top 15 maybe at tight end. I could kind of see that. So if you're in a deep league or you want a second tight end, you're in a tight end premium league, these guys are fine to put on the end of your bench if you have a lot of roster space.
I mean, with Smith, we know how that offense is going to run. It's going to be run heavy with concentrated on Waddle and Tyreek. So I wouldn't expect anything from him. I hope that people aren't having to start these guys.
Yeah, I agree. You're not looking to start. These are speculative dart throws in deep leagues for sure. Trending down, I can't believe that Kmet is owned in 75% of the leagues. So he rightfully has been dropped in the most number of leagues. I think that this number is going to continue to plummet. And he's been splitting snaps almost evenly with Gerald Everett in the preseason. And if that is reflected at all in the regular season, he's not going to be worth anything. And it's unfortunate because, he was kind of a top 8 tight end last year. He was really starting to come into his own. He was the number 2 target on the offense. So I don't think it's a reflection of him as a player. I think, adding Keenan Allen, adding Robert-Dunze, and then adding Gerald Everett that's going to compete directly with him is the product of this. So I just can't get behind it. I think he should be dropped almost everywhere. Any of the receivers that we talked about, any of the running backs that we talked about, this is a perfect cut candidate if you have him on your roster.
At best, he'll be the number 4 option with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Darren Waller, this is getting cut from Dynasty League since he retired. I don't think we need to spend any more time on there. Taysom Hill showing up in the most dropped is also hilarious to me.
People can't make up their minds.
Yeah, I guess they pick him up and then drop him. But, about a third of the people who picked him up dropped him. So, I think, having 66% of the people that did add him kind of keep him, I think kind of reflects where we're at. He's about 50% rostered, which is kind of where all of these back end tight end ones are going to be anyways. So Like the kind of the last, once you get past the top 8, basically 9 down is going to be until you start getting into the 12 to 20% range. Will be roughly 50% rostered. So I think that's about right for Taysom Hill. Number 4 on the trending down list was Zach Ertz. I was actually really surprised to see this. I just assumed he wasn't going to get drafted anywhere and that people would start to pick him up a little bit as we got news that he was going to be involved with this Washington offense, kind of a safety valve for Jaden Daniels, but he's getting dropped. So I guess people don't like him.
I think people drafted him on name value in friendly leagues.
And then decided to cut him.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
fair
know why.
too. And I think
I've never seen him drafted anywhere.
I
this
really
year.
hope this doesn't turn into a situation where he's blocking Ben Sinnott like we saw with Trey McBride last year in Arizona. I would very much like to see him maybe get off to a quick start once Ben Sinnott gets involved with the blocking, gets those schemes down, gets his route tree kind of locked in, gets used to the speed of the game that they go with him. Talented second round rookie, right? He was a second round pick. And
Second or third, I think.
yeah, so he was a day 2 pick, and I really hope that they don't have Ertz block him, kind of like they did with McBride, because McBride should have been playing all year.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear that he was much better than Ertz. So, and then the last guy I wanted to highlight here, 34% rostered. He's down. That's really not that many leagues he's been dropped in. That's not a significant amount or anything. But Cade Otton, I do think he had a pretty good down the stretch run last year. Was very good in the playoff game, and if there's an option here. Jalen McMillan is looking really good in camp. He's going to be the number 3. He's a rookie. So maybe that's why he's getting dropped. There's news that, if he gets bumped to the number 4 option, that's going to be tough for him in the offense, or number 5, I guess, even behind Rashad White. So, that's going to lead to a lot of sporadic games and sporadic production for him. But I do think that he's a decent option, similar to Colby Parkinson and Johnny Smith.
Yeah, I think if you wait on tight end in a 16-team league, Otton is someone that I would be targeting with tight end 15, just because he does have a rapport with Baker. But yeah, I wouldn't have him as a second tight end.
All right, and with that, that's our review of the running back, wide receiver, and tight end trending up, trending down. There was not much data on the quarterbacks. That's why we left them out. So even though this is a Superflex channel, there's not a lot to report there. There's not going to be a lot of trends either in your Superflex leagues. I mean, it may be Gardner Minshew got added, So, but other than that, there's really not much to report on the quarterbacks from this perspective. All right, with that, thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing the next one.
Later.